Well, welcome to Open Talk. I'd like to welcome our very special guest, Samantha. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How are you today?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. 3 times over.
So
Good.
first and foremost, where are you right now? Because we're not obviously in the same studio together. Where are you?
We're not, but I mean, I could show the BTS real quick. It would play magic a little bit. But I'm
Where in the
actually in
world
my
is Samantha?
home office in Brooklyn, New York at the moment.
Oh,
My home
fantastic.
base office, even though I bounce around quite a bit, which we'll probably get into a little bit later. But yeah,
So
I'm
in this
here for
crazy,
now.
crazy world of, protests and Black Lives Matter and COVID and politics, how are you doing right now?
Uh, Maybe
Personally.
better.
Yeah.
Maybe better. The thing, well, I don't want to get into it too early in case we talk about
Yeah,
it
we're
later.
gonna dive deep in. Emotionally, you
Okay.
good at the moment? You're hanging in there?
Yeah, that's what I
Because
was
we're gonna
saying.
dive deep. I'm gonna make you cry. I'm gonna make you laugh. No.
Good. I got my. I have them. I have my box of
You got your
tissues.
bucket tissues. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Get
Fantastic.
ready.
So
Am
let's jump
I?
right in. Where did you grow up?
South Jersey near Philadelphia. So a lot of I used to just I used to just say I was from Philly, but that's not really fair, because I didn't grow up in the city. But I grew up with Action News. It's 30 minutes to 45, depending on your traffic, on the Jersey side of Philadelphia. So my accent originally, it may come out, it may not, would be more in line with that rather than the New York or North Jersey accent.
And what was the family dynamic? Brothers, sisters, parents, grandparents. What
Yes,
was it?
interesting. If I may, I'll give a cliff note because it's a little
Yeah.
busy. But it's my dad's from Mobile, Alabama. He's black and Creole black, I guess you
Oh,
could
okay.
say. And then my mom is from Trenton, but of German and Irish descent. Like my
Did you get the
great
Creole
grandparents
food
from there.
cooking and all that influences in
I
wonderful?
did some. Not from my mom's side, I guess, but my dad. I mean, he's the old school. He's born 1930, right? So back then they didn't really teach. It wasn't like the guys are going to stay in the kitchen type of thing. But he somehow did learn how to make gumbo.
Uh,
So I did have that, and
it
there's
all
a
comes
few
down to
other
the roux
things.
now, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it's the seasoning, really.
Ah, the roux. It starts with
Yeah,
the roux. It starts with the
yeah,
roux.
that's true, and you do put seasoning in that. But my aunt didn't teach me that way. She taught me, my dad didn't teach me how to make it. My aunt did. My dad has loads of sisters, which are only two left now, and he had two brothers, which are both gone now. But they're down south still, so I still get to see them and stuff. But yeah, my aunt Gloria taught me how to make gumbo a bunch of years ago because I used to live in New Orleans and I would drive over to Mobile and
Ah,
visit, and that's when she taught me how to make it. My grandmom used to make it, but she passed before I learned how to do it from her. But then it's kind of the Creole thing. My grandmom's on my dad's side, she's half French, half Cherokee.
oh,
Like
wow.
she spoke Creole and stuff.
My great
Yeah.
great grandmother was full blooded Cherokee Indian.
Oh, no way.
Yeah,
I might
yeah.
talk with you outside of this about that a bit. I'm trying to learn more about that. There's not a lot of information passed down on
It's
that. They
tough.
were
It's
shy
tough.
on it.
Yeah. Same in
Me
my
too.
family. Yeah.
Okay, it was really
So,
hard. They
what
were
was it
trying to
like
learn everything.
growing up in your family and a mixed race, mixed racial father?
That is interesting because I mentioned my dad is from Mobile and my
Yeah.
mom is from the north. Yeah, but even though my mom's from the north, like I never met her only brother until he was in his coffin because he was racist, so he didn't really believe in
Ugh.
my parents' marriage and stuff. But I met my mom's family died young, mostly, but I met her siblings that were still alive when I was around, and didn't meet her parents, but and they came around. And one of them's husband, my aunt Thelma's husband, was. I heard about it when I was a baby. Wasn't really, he didn't really want to come around because of the interracial marriage thing. But then I grew up knowing her, so I didn't even know about that story until I was an adult. So that was cool. And we grew up on a military base, or just off. Pemberton, New Jersey is, like I said, with 25 miles east of Philadelphia, but it's also in the Pine Barrens, right? It's kind of in the boonies, really. But then it's there's three major military bases. There's Lakehurst Naval Air Station, where the Hindenburg went down, for some people
Yeah.
that might remember that one or have
Yeah.
read about it. Very close to where I grew up. Yeah. Like that you would have heard it if it happened while I was
Wow.
in my day. Yeah. So, but Fort Dix was adjacent in McGuire Air Force Base. They now call it some joint base or something, but I was born on Fort Dix. So being with the military, I didn't move around a lot because when my dad had retired, he was 40 when I was born, but most of my friends changed every 3 years, and they came from Okinawa, from Seoul, from Heidelberg, from Hawaii, from wherever there was a base they came from. So our school was pretty much already that mix that we were used to, and that the rest of the world, we found out later, was not, which was weird.
Yeah.
Except for when we went down south to visit. My mom brought this up last week, if I may share this. She just said this last
Yeah.
week, was we were all riding down, because my dad had a marriage first. He's married to a German woman first, before my mom, which he lost his stripes over for interracially marrying before it was legal, but that's another story. But so
I mean,
we were,
that's such a incredible. I mean, we're talking about within your generation how like fresh these scars are. I mean, that's unbelievable.
yeah. There's a lot there,
Yeah.
actually. He also went in, and well, because I was talking about the military, I'll start there and then to that other story is like 30 seconds. So I'll start with this one before I get into that, because it leads into, this is mostly what he's gone through. But you know, they're in mapping the human genome. People are saying that you're able to inherit, like blue eyes, certain traumas from past generations. Some people believe it's like, oh, past life stuff. Some people don't believe in that, which is
Yeah.
fine. And some people believe, though, that this is coming. You may think that either because if you believe that that happened to you, or you're inheriting it through your genes. There are some, more than some signs of that actually being a truth, as far as you're inheriting a trauma gene, you know? So not only that, but say your family is sharing stories with you, as you said, that becomes part of your generation, because that's the experience of your parents. They'll have the talk with you, you're Black, or you're this, or you're that, and or maybe they're not. I mean, we did, you know, that was just part of our thing. Or the world is not going to like you. The world is not, you know what I mean? It would, you know, some kind
How
of,
open was that discussion, and how did you
there
feel?
wasn't one discussion about it. It was just your life. There wasn't,
Yeah.
some parents I hear about, and they're from mostly not mixed families, though I don't, you know, I shouldn't say that because it's kind of all over the place, but they'll say, oh, if I have a Black son specifically, I'm going to tell him when they're a teenager. We didn't have that. We had more like, you just knew always. I didn't think anybody didn't talk about that. I just kind of just learned that recently. I was like, you don't talk about that? It's weird.
What about outside the family dynamic, like the school and friends and stuff like that? Was it, you know, kind
We
of
grew
brought
up
up?
with the military. So like I said, it was a very, I grew up in the same town, well, except for when I moved to Trenton, when my parents got divorced in 1980. But in the town of Pemberton, it is very highly influenced on the military. And being with that, again, backtracking, because I'm going to start with the military really quick with my dad. He went in 1948 and got out in 1969. I was born in 70, yeah. So when he went in, it was still segregated. They had made a law saying that they were going to integrate the military, but it hadn't rolled it all out yet. Kind of like slavery, it took 2 years, right?
Yeah.
For the slaves to actually be free. So it was not too dissimilar. So he stayed in the barn with the animals instead of barracks. And he said, well, the white soldiers had barracks and tennis courts. He stayed on hay bales. So, you know, but the thing was, he said, at least he was treated the same as all his other neighboring soldiers. They were all Black. Whereas when it started to become integrated, and then he met his wife in the 50s, that's when he lost his stripes, because they threatened him. They said, well, he was living in Germany, which was great. He said that was like, ironically, they were doing cleanups from World War II, which we know what was going on there, right? But he said, you know, most of the Germans were not actually racist at that time. You know, they're succumbing to what the regime was. And of course, there were those that believed that, but the ones he met did not. And the white soldiers were telling the German kids that Black soldiers were monkeys and that they had tails. My dad spoke German, so they all asked him where his tail was, and he understood what they were asking because he understood German. So he had to deal with all that. So I heard all those stories. I heard all the stories about, you know, talking about him staying in the barn. And then when the military was integrated and he met his German wife, that his white commandant, he said, commander, he's like, well, I'm from the Carolinas and that doesn't fly here. I don't care if we're living in Germany. You live on the base and you can't marry this white woman or you're going to lose your rank. And he did. He made up some stories and pulled his rank to the point my dad was losing his career over it. My dad had other connections. And so he said he was able to re-enlist, but he had to start from the bottom. So he had to work bottom. And he retired with a decent rank, but not nearly what it would have been had he.
Yeah. So let's jump to you as a little Sam running around. Were you the tomboy? What were you like as a?
How did you know that?
You can tell a certain zest of life in someone, and you have that glow in your eyes about loving people, and it shows very clearly in your work. So what were you like as a little child? Were you like in books, reading movies? Like reading or watching movies, watching TV, or were you just out playing with friends all the time, out getting dirty?
I was dyslexic and I didn't know it till I was almost 40. So reading was really hard for me. I played music by ear and I was called a prodigy and was going and got not a lot, but some scholarship money to go to state school for music while I was shooting, also shooting stills photography. But so reading was I do now on Audible, and now that I know about the dyslexia, it's easier to manage in reading and Kindle and things like that, and real books.
Well,
But
you're an extremely great company. Einstein, Da Vinci, Edison, Rockefeller, all dyslexic, and myself as well. So I know
appreciate that.
I am a full-on dyslexic, and it's what's a shame is it's one of those things. Once they tell you, it's just like anything else. You can't see it. There's no way of grasping it. It's not like a scar you can see or a missing limb or something like that. It's like you're just told you're different in a way, and you learn differently. And it was funny when I was growing up. They said, oh, he's a very smart and he tests great, but he's just lazy, and he's not applying himself and stuff like that. And I think I've only seen my father probably cry twice in my life. And once was when he found out that I was dyslexic, because he felt he was so hard on me and pushing me in school that I wasn't applying myself. Once they found out I was dyslexic and I learned differently, that's the first time I ever saw him cry. And he just felt this guilt about, pressuring me and not understanding it. And once, it's like I can see, it's like there's a misnomer that it's like a learning disability or something like that, but it's not. It's that we learn differently, and we take in things. And the best way I can describe it is when an average person looks at a page to read, they want to, take in maybe 5 to 10 words or maybe 30 words a second, where the dyslexic looks at that page, wants to take in every letter, every shape, the whole page in at once. So we have to consciously refocus ourselves back to one letter and follow it across the page and stay focused. And it's so hard and so difficult because we want to take it all in at once. And that's why just like extremely creative, extremely, and the average dyslexic actually has the higher IQ on average. So that's why you're artistic. And
I was actually wondering
visual,
that.
because we learn through audio and visual instead of,
That makes sense with the piano thing too. And then I played by ear, that they were so shocked that it was playing Beethoven sonatas and I able to read the music.
So you're actually in good company.
I really appreciate that. No, that's been a huge, it's been an issue, for me, because I didn't know until so late. It's like, you get called dumb, but then you get called super smart and prodigy in the same day by somebody else, but they didn't understand that was actually the missing link.
Yeah. So your parents, obviously not photographers, but where did the camera first come in to play for you?
Actually, that's interesting. And here's my mom, where she comes in. I mentioned a lot about my dad at Fast Forward, which was, in relation to a lot of the race thing. My mom grew up extremely poor, I think hungry, kind of poor, not homeless or anything, but a little they were on the hungry side, but yeah, parents didn't go to high school or any of that. They just worked in a factory from 10 years old until on, and that's it. Probably why they died young, but one of the reasons. But anyway, somebody gifted her, she said a friend or some other family member got lucky and was able to buy a brownie camera for her, and she did that. And then some old 8mm black and white movies, she started doing that in the 60s, and it was so precious to her because she didn't have anything else. It was just like every little gift is like, because imagine if you don't have a lot, it's just such a huge deal. And that's not a small thing anyway. A brownie or a video or a movie camera back then is a big deal to begin with. So she was just like holding on to that like it's gold, So she was shooting with that. And then when I came around, she still had that video. Oh, she got an upgrade. It was color, but no sound. So basically our whole lives as kids is on the 8mm.
You still have that whole archive
Yeah. We have that. And it hasn't been transferred over. I have a projector in my basement that I need to get something fixed on it.
I would say you should definitely transfer that digital.
Yeah. We have all of that, from baby. I have a first memory was I think it is a first memory, was a bright ass light from that camera, because it's, you hear that, and this bright light is just, and you can see it in the footage, just like, you start crying.
Is that sound of a projector just does it make you feel warm and toasty inside?
I think so. It's been a while since I heard it. I mean, I feel bad for those that haven't. I'm like, we gotta have that, but then Polaroids came in, 110 cameras later. But all that. So I thought everybody's family did that. And so at high school, when I was skipping lunch to play piano with no lessons, mind you, no trajectory other than I got to do this, Anyway, it was like a relief because I couldn't really read, and playing was just so much. I just felt amazing about it. I had to do it. And I also started shooting. I got myself a little 35 millimeter. I remember.
Was that your very first camera? What was your very first camera? Do you
110.
remember
No,
owning yourself?
my I think it was a 110. Just
Yep,
clicking
same
in
for
the
me.
8th grade.
Same
Yeah.
for
Oh no,
me.
wait.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I
That's
couldn't.
awesome.
I remember visiting my grandparents in Texas, and there wasn't a lot to do there. But I had this 110 camera, and I remember shooting the film. And like, can we go to the drugstore? Because that's where we drop off the film.
Yep.
And I would wait. Is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? And it would be 2 or 3 days, and I get it back, and like there'd be like 15 terrible pictures that just were just blurry, just
Crap.
terrible. And then a couple of them like, oh, and that was
That was it. And they'd have golf balls in them. It was so grainy. But yeah, we used to go to the BXPX and get them developed. That's like the mall for the military people. We used to just go there.
Yep.
So they did. Yeah, it was that, and then it was. I don't know if it was. I don't know what I remember. What I had in high school. I had Polaroids. I remember like a regular Polaroid. I still have one somewhere over here. But so we grew up with Polaroids, which ironically lived through like a hurricane. They are the one thing that will last. I wish they were still in business, really. Anyway, that's a plug. They still were. But then it was some Canon that didn't have, this was later though. This was like end of high school. It might've been an AE1. Yeah, I think it was an AE1 or something manual that I had gotten and started shooting with that, mistakes, like you said, auto mode, or you figure it out. There was no YouTube. Yeah, YouTube University was not around, kids. You know what I'm saying? So, and not a whole lot of photo classes, except for in my high school, one guy that was shooting on the Air Force Base one high school friend of mine did have a darkroom club. So we did that in high school. So I started shooting that and got made fun of for taking pictures of everything. That's when I realized not everybody's families documented their whole life. When you're asking about parents being photographers, no, not really. But my mom liked to paint.
But it was an amateur, that pure amateur. Is that where you feel you got the passion from? That's where
I don't know. I'm guessing because
photography was?
Then my dad got a videotape camera later, like in the 90s, and started filming stuff. Not as much as my mom, but he did, because they were divorced by then. And he was like, he was used to spoiled, like used to seeing all this footage of us. So he's like, well, I got to do this too. Actually, he got it in the 80s. I didn't think about it because they were split up already by then. But yeah, I think that I was just used to shooting everything, and I didn't think of it like as photography. You just thought of it as like nobody had phone. You know what I mean? It wasn't like now you take your phone out and take a picture. Most people didn't take pictures. I didn't know that. I was just taking pictures, and then people were like, it was bad back then. Even talking about race, people were like, "Are you Chinese?" I'm like, "What is wrong with you to even make a comment like that?" But there were some non-military people in the town, is what I'm trying to get at. Some folks that were not as exposed to bouncing around the world, and they were a little bit on the racist side. There was like KKK locals, and then people from all over the world. It's kind of weird and mixed, but they were the minority, the racist one. But they made a comment, and then of course when I'd come back with all these pictures of them in the school, oh, can I get a copy? Oh, I thought you were making fun of me for taking so many pictures. So I just then the pictures started getting better and better just by virtue of doing them and playing around in the dark room, building your own dark room. Going to college for classical piano because of the one teacher with the Prodigy label. I was able, because my grades weren't great, dyslexia, I didn't know, short story long, but managed to get some money. Just couldn't go to a great, music school or anything. But I was like, if I get a degree in a BA from the state school, then maybe I could go on to like Juilliard if I really bust my, pardon the expression, ass. Blur that out, but pardon my bust my butt. So shooting, got to college, lived with my mom in Trenton, walked to school, and was shooting at the school, met somebody that, I know, 1 Hour Photo Lab you mentioned. It's called 1 Hour Moto Photo. They got me started. I begged them to work there. I said, I want to learn how to print color. And they were like, we're a automatic lab. But back then, the automatic labs didn't have a digital screen. You actually still had to read the neg. Even though it was a machine, you still had to read the neg in order to punch the buttons and to know that, the density of the image or add color or
So
whatever.
at this point, when you're asking them, you want to work there?
I was 18 years old.
18 years old. And was this already like, I want to be a photographer and I want to work in this industry? Or
I
was
don't
it
know.
still just
I think it was, you know what it was? You was, because I saw pictures of Rolling Stone. It was, you're right. I'm glad you said that, because being an aspiring pianist, that actually came from the new wave sounds that were out in the early 80s with all the synthesizers. Yeah. And I used to mimic all that. So I had these little keyboards that my aunt gave me, these little Casio M16 or M68 or whatever, like the cheapo ones. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And I started playing classical music on that after somehow. I think the movie Amadeus came out. I was inspired. So, you know, but I wanted to shoot musicians because I was like, I was so in tune with that, pun intended, ta. And I saw Rolling Stone magazines, but nobody in my military town was doing. They were like, aren't you going to be a teacher? Aren't you going to be like, you could go to law school. You can go to college. You know, my dad with the GI Bill went to college and became a lawyer when he was 50. So I was already like 10 or 11 or whatever at that point. So he's like, I gave you his background. So he was just like, well, you don't have to have it as hard as we would normally have it. And your mom, you know, grew up really broke. You don't have to have it like that. Your grandparents didn't even go to high school. You can go to college. You might as well be a lawyer or a teacher or some job that you, not like you can open your own firm, but like something that's stable that you work for somebody else so you don't have to starve. That was.
Were you entertaining that idea? Was it a kind of a battle?
No.
Like, was it, you were like, I want to be a photographer.
I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to be a classical pianist
first,
yeah.
and then when did it transition basically from musician?
It started in high school with the story I was telling you about shooting for everybody. Everybody asked me to take pictures because they loved them after they stopped making fun of me. But I didn't think of it as a career until right after high school. I was really into Rolling Stone. It was different magazine back then, you know. It was a transition, I think, from Annie Leibovitz into Mark Zeliger shooting, and I loved that style. Not really overly retouched, if at all. It was pretty raw, but it had they had these super cool environments. And it told you a story about the person, and I love that. And you mentioned something about, I think, connecting with people, and I didn't realize it until recently. That's the main thing that I love to do. So I was like, oh, I love this, but ain't nobody in my town was thinking about that. You know, like I just gave you a little bit of background with that. So it was more like, that was like going to Hollywood and being an actor. Might as well, that's never going to happen for you. Don't do that. So there was a little bit of a point of contention where they didn't even want me to go to school for piano, but Trenton State, it was called at the time, college in New Jersey now, was known as a teaching college. So that was the only reason they were like, oh, well, you can be a teacher. I didn't want to be a teacher. Freshman year, I realized I wasn't going to be a pianist because it was too lonely of a job. I like connecting with people. And I practiced, like, if you're at the piano 8 to 10 hours a day, you're not talking to anybody. And I was like, this is going to suck. I came from a repressed military dad that was like, I couldn't do anything. So at least I want to enjoy my life too. So it's kind of like, well, it's not going to happen if I'm sitting here at the piano. And there was only one black pianist that I knew about. I didn't know about Don Shirley, if that's even his real name. Jesus, I might get it wrong. A pianist back in the 60s and 70s, lived above Carnegie Hall. I knew about Andre Watts, which was from Philadelphia, who went to Curtis. I saw him live, cried my eyes out. And he was the only black or brown classical musicians that I knew about at the time. There may have been a few others, but just they weren't really advertised. So I just didn't see that. I was like, wow, this might really not happen for me, because when I got to college, it wasn't like high school and it was segregated. White people over here, blacks over there, Chinese, Spanish. I did not experience that before. So that was a culture shock. And I got schooled really fast that I really had no place for this mixed race person in the middle. There was no group for me.
Once
so I
you
just
kind of decided to jump into photography, what was your first, like, you know, how did you like, wow, I'm going to jump into this? Like, where did you go from, 18 working at a,
moto photo.
a moto photo, 1 hour moto photo?
That actually was the start though. That was it, because the guy that owned that was dope. He was like, two guys that owned that. One guy was more into printing, but one guy we used to shoot for Squibb, Bristol Myers Squibb. He used to shoot events for them, and then he was shooting weddings. He taught me how to shoot weddings. He brought me with him. He taught me how to shoot events for Squibb, like commercial events. He taught me how to shoot real estate. And they had a portrait studio in there. That was the big thing. It wasn't just, they made more money on a portrait studio than I did on the lab, because he was a good portrait shooter. He was really good with kids. So he taught me how to shoot kids and dogs, which I didn't really enjoy doing, no offense to them. But I learned a bit about shooting portraits from that guy. From that, it snowballed into other wedding stuff mostly. But I was like, what about Rolling Stone? I want to shoot for them. Rolling Stone was not in the middle of New Jersey or South Jersey at the time. And I called the Rolling Stone and asked them, you could get them on the phone back then. It was like 89 or 90. And I was like, hey, they answered. I had no confidence. I wasn't raised with a lot of that. So I don't know. I kind of got scared, but I would, and they said, well, you could intern. I never heard of the word intern. I didn't know what that was. That didn't really, unless you were a doctor, that didn't really exist where I was from, and it wasn't that kind of place. There was no mentorship. I didn't know what that meant till like 20 years later. And so I said, intern, well, you work for free. And I'm like, well, how am I going to live in New York and work for free? I lived like 2.5 hours away from New York. I just didn't see a pathway for me to do that with no money. I didn't understand. So that sucked. And I said, well, I guess this is never going to happen. I just kind of shot weddings, you know? And then fast forward, there were a couple other people I met, like car breaks down, you sit on a bus, you talk to people, the bus driver, he's like, hey, my brother does weddings. So he hired me to shoot with him. And then next thing you know, through that, well, there's a rental house. I was living in Philly at the time. I graduated with the music degree, but also photo minor, by the way. The Trenton State College hired me to shoot for their newspaper and all that. So that was where I got a lot of stuff. I shot for BMS, Bristol Myers Squibb. I shot for all that through Moto Photo, and I shot a bunch of weddings. But when I lived in Philly, the guy that I met through the bus ride when my car was broken down, his brother that owned a wedding company, oh, well, you can rent some gear. Because I was like, well, I don't own this. I said, rent gear? I never heard of that. You know, what do you mean rent gear? And this was like in the mid-90s. He goes, you can rent something that's placed in Philly called Abby's Camera. I go to Abby's Camera, and there's a book that says how to be a photo assistant. This isn't like 96, 95, 96. And I was like, oh, what's that? Commercial, what's that? And this guy in there renting gear saw me reading it. He said, are you a photo assistant? I need one. I shoot annual reports. I became his photo assistant. Through him, there was an agency, which I wish still existed. You know, maybe the APA or somebody can come up with one. He was that sent out, it was kind of like a rep that sent out photo assistants. So they would like, you know, it was cheap rates, like $112 exactly per day, right? But they would send you out they would marry you with other photographers. I started working with them. I did a digital seminar in 97, moved to Chicago. Now it's fast forward. Worked finally in the commercial world as an assistant at all these studios, mostly product, architecture, food, stuff that I don't like shooting, right? I shouldn't say that because I do those jobs. But I mean, I like shooting people, but I'm like, this is not Rolling Stone. Why am I in Chicago? What am I doing? 9/11 happened right when I tried to move to New York. That's not going to happen. You know, I had already lived in New Orleans. In New Orleans, there was no work. This is before Hollywood South happened. There was no shooting. So I went to Miami thinking I could meet people in New York because it was post 9/11. I was like, that's going to be hard as hell to try to get a job there. Forget that. I'm going to starve. And I went to, I was already starving. I was broke anyway still, but I went to Miami, and the fashion industry was there, and I don't shoot fashion, but that's how I got on that circuit as a tech. You know digital? Yeah, dude, we've been doing digital for like years now. They didn't understand it, so that was easy to get into digital there.
So you started in obviously in film and switched into digital. How was that foray like for you? Was it something that you were eager to adopt, or was it something like, I don't know about this?
Eager, because in 1997, I did my first digital seminar in Philadelphia at that place I was talking about, the studio, the rep agency that had a bunch of photo assistants that would send us out. They would have like talks like APA does, or, you know, like you have little group meetings and stuff. So we had that, and we had this guy said, hey, here's digital. The Canon one, I don't know what it was, number one something came out. And, you know, I don't even know if he had the camera with him, but he was talking about it. And so we learned about pixels then, and we learned, and I said, oh. And then I moved to Chicago, and this one studio that I worked at. There's all these studios, I forgot the names of them now. Ambrosi was one of them, like a bunch of other places like that. Chicago was the home base for all that stuff, right? Because it was all products, right? Way before there was Amazon, there was Chicago, okay? So you go there, and it's like they build their own sets. Everything was all in one. They had their own everything. It was like 2 gigantic city blocks in Chicago of this warehouse just of a photo place. But they were like, what do we do with this Megavision? Or Mind Vision. I don't remember what it's called, Mind Vision or Megavision. The Kodak DCS camera was this big. You know what I mean? They were like, well, you know, maybe we could start shooting with that. So we were curious to learn, and I was pretty nerdy because I like video games. So I was on it, and there was no pressure really because nobody knew how to use them. We were using genuine fractals to res up the files. We was a scan back, you know, and then those were newer. The triple shot backs were before that because they had a red, green, blue filter on the front because they couldn't really read all colors at the same time. So obviously you're not shooting people with that. When they came out with single shot backs, we're like the DCS one was a single shot back. We're like, oh, and that was not too long before Miami those guys were mostly shooting still film down there because the cameras weren't fast enough to shoot for fashion. But a couple of people were like, I think I want to try digital. The cameras were overheating in Miami, didn't handle it, but I already knew it. So that transition it wasn't that hard for me because I came on at a time that nobody knew anything. So everybody was just like, you could make mistakes. They cared, but it was just like, let's figure it out together. There was no protocol. There was nothing, right? So it wasn't like trying to get in now where people go to college for it. None of that.
No, you were literally pioneering the whole new frontier of digital, and kind of, figuring it out on the fly.
Yeah, you're creating your own on-set protocol as you go because it didn't exist.
So you're in Miami shooting fashion and doing that. To where do you get to the next? What's the next journey?
Most of the people that were down there were from New York, majority, or Europe. Most. So I was assisting. I shot some stuff on my own. I was really into this Rolling Stone style still that I wanted to do, right? So I was still shooting film, and I worked for wedding agencies because I didn't want to spend the time marketing myself shooting weddings. So I worked for companies, for tiddlywinks, killing myself shooting weddings on the weekends. But so finally these guys, I was like, hey, I'm trying to move to New York. So can I work with you when I come to New York? So I became some people's second assistant, but it was all fashion. I'm trying to do Rolling Stone. I kind of got stuck in the fashion world for a long time because I needed to pay rent. New York was the most expensive place, still is, that I've ever lived. So I couldn't really mess around. I had like bartending job, like 3 jobs, bartending plus delivering food, plus assisting, plus trying to shoot weddings on the weekends, plus trying to
So, I mean, you're someone that so is impassioned about photography, but it's not an easy thing just to be a photographer. You've held so many different types of jobs. And what's the strangest kind of job you held during all of this?
I was a carriage driver in Philadelphia. Ben Franklin's house, Betsy Ross, which isn't even her house, but they're lying to you and telling it's Betsy Ross's house. Independence Hall, that's real, like that. I gave tours for a while there. So shoveling horse crap at the end of the night, but it was interesting. That was one. Six Flags I worked at. Like I said, service industry, very heavy, bartending, delivering food. But that kind of stuff was good because then you could move to another city and do that. And the bartending thing started to get hard because you couldn't make your own schedule at most of these places. So that kind of got shut down. I only became like with cater waiter bartender or for events, but not like at a bar after a while because it was getting in the way of the photo assisting jobs that I was getting, or, my own jobs. I could kind of manage the time frame. You can kind of dictate that, but I couldn't do that for the assisting jobs or the tech jobs. And those became my bread and butter, especially the tech stuff. Then you're on the circuit. Then I was but a lot of people wouldn't hire females either. I got told in Miami by one person they wouldn't hire me because I'm a female. That was out. Oh, and I didn't see one person of color in those days. 0. One guy. I'm going to count him. One guy in Chicago, one black male photographer.
You're sitting here not trying to blast through one multiple like glass ceiling. You're trying to blast through multiple glass ceilings here. It's like,
it felt like bricks though. Like bricks. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a guy, I told people, if anybody is going to be listening to this and listened to a panel that I did last year, I told this story. It's the first time I think I verbalized it in public, but I worked through an agency in Chicago where they'd hire photographers out, right? Mostly for events, and it was a black guy that it was halfway through the job. And he told me this story, pulled me to the side and he said, hey, just to let you know, I had to think about this long and hard. Job wasn't over, by the way, middle of the job. And he said, I asked the agency specifically he didn't use the words person of color. I don't know what he said, black or something, minority, I don't know. But he had said, I wanted to hire one of my own, And he said, I asked them, and I think it was the only one that worked for the agency at that time. And he said, but it was a very difficult decision to make because I knew the work wasn't going to be as good enough. It wasn't going to be it wasn't going to be up to par. He said, but I needed to do that because when else am I going to bring up my own or hire my own? You got to support. So I was just like, all right, well, I'll suck it up and get work that's not as good. And he said, I'm telling you this because you are way above and beyond what I thought I was going to get. Not only that, but you're better than any white man I thought I would have hired. So I just wanted to tell you, and mind you, he had not seen the pictures yet because it was on film. He saw them later, but he could just tell I was being extra, right? And as I say, and he He said that to me and shared it to me, and he's black. How many people thought that either subconsciously didn't even realize that's why they're not hiring certain folks, or they're not telling you that, or they're extra scrutinizing you because of that, whether they're conscious of it or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was, granted, that was in like 2002, but it's not 1962.
Which, I mean, I want to touch upon this a little more. Having worked, how many years now would you say you've been working as a photographer?
But we count since, 18 or what, like 30.
Yeah, 30. So when you started as a woman of color, how far have we come? We have just scratched the surface in terms of, women working in the industry, women of color working in the industry. And how do you feel about the changes that maybe and hopefully are happening today?
That's why I said in the beginning, when you said, what's your emotions like? I said better, because, well, I'll explain that one, why. But Miami situation was 2002, 2003, right? Off and on, seasonally, right? A little bit of 04. That's when the guy called me up. Well, he told me he wouldn't hire a woman photographer, but he ended up hiring me because he was desperate. And then he complimented me, something like that dude in Chicago. He was like, yo, wow. I mean, I killed myself down there. I got like, you can't see it, but I got guns, and it's from that. Miami's hard, like on assistance. I'm not going to play games there. Miami it's not like New York. It's cute. You're in a studio. You carry a couple bags. That is not a joke down there. Like you're on the beach hauling stuff. Like they need like Neanderthals down there. And so he was just like, wow. And he gave me compliments, but not only just what I carried, but also obviously what I knew. I'm like, yeah, I know lighting, duh. I've been doing film. At that point, it was already well over 10 years, but 15 years, but if something like that. No, 10. But anyway, after that, I heard so many times when I got to New York, oh, this one doesn't hire. I shouldn't say names. I won't. I don't. A couple names. But I heard. I was like, why can't I get into these people? I want to work for Rolling Stone. They were like, well, you got to assist people that work for Rolling Stone. Those folks were not hiring. What I was told, they were not hiring female assistants. You know what? Maybe it's not true, but when I did see them, I didn't see them having female assistants. Yeah. Again, I don't know if that's true. I don't want to, that's why I'm not saying their names too. I don't know if it's 100% true. I was told that's what it looked like, but they may be untrue. So I worked for people that did hire female assistants, or a female assistant of color, POC, right? So, which that was hard too. It did, I don't know. You'd heard a few things. One guy that hired me, literally, I forgot about this one. He said, oh, I was referred to him, and I don't think he knew what I looked like before I got there. And I got there, he's like, oh, well, you'd be good, because like then people can't say that I'm a racist. They always say I won't hire blacks or women or whatever. I had 3. I can't remember what it was, what the third one was. But he said, but you're black and female, and one more thing, I don't remember. He's like, yeah, so that'd be great, because then people will realize it'll look good for me. I was like, first day, I didn't know if he was serious. To this day, I don't know if he was joking. No idea. I was like, so, and some people said, no, I don't think he was joking. He's known for like being a little, damn. So that was weird to be a token as like a badge, like, look what I'm hiring. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I got here and it was mostly fashion. I think one of the reasons was because I'm a female, not the person of color thing, but I don't know. There were women that did assist some other folks. I knew somebody that assisted Bruce Weber. I knew somebody that assisted, I can't remember the other person's name now, but it was of that caliber in the Bruce Weber world. But still, that's fashion though, right? It's not, it's higher up, but I was like, damn, and they weren't at first though. They were like film loaders. So still it was kind of, I think, even hard on them to get to be like a first, and they might've been more anomalies there too. But that was hard. That was the biggest thing I noticed, was a female thing, but also that there really were little to no blacks. Kawaku Alston I met, but he even said, he goes, I went to one of his seminars. He goes, I got in because I got lucky and went to RIT, which I didn't. I told you that story already, right? He said, and because I went to RIT, it was who I sat next to that ended up becoming photo editors for so-and-so magazines, and they hired their buddy. I happened to be their buddy, so I got lucky. He said, I didn't even really know what I was doing at first. He said, but you fake it a little bit and you got in there, and they hire you for basic stuff because they were lower entry level positions anyway. And he said, that's how I got in, with some people I know. And then obviously his work shined through that, of course, but it took a minute. Right. But he goes, also hip hop was happening. That was the early 90s. And I happened to be like the only black shooter they knew. So, so you get tagged. You're the black guy. Let's have you shoot the hip hop stuff. And then, you can shoot for Oprah. Done. Launched. And I didn't have that. Right.
Yeah.
So if you don't have that, that's interesting. And I got told by one of my really good, he's a white photographer. We're super tight to this day, but he worked in Atlanta a lot. He goes, people are going to tell you to go to Atlanta. I'm not going to tell you to go to Atlanta, but I'm telling you. And they did. He said, okay, because I was about to move to New York. It's in Miami. And he goes, he looked at the work. He's like, all right, you want to shoot music? You want to shoot this? He's like, okay, I'm going to let you know right now, a lot of people are going to judge you. A lot of people, and he's the one that had the conversation with me that some black moms have with their sons in a way,
Yeah.
That's when I had that part of the industry side of that conversation. He goes, they're going to tell you shoot in Atlanta, that you'll do well in Atlanta. And this is why, because, I was like, because you're black or because of this. He was right. I got to New York, you show your book. Maybe you should check out Essence magazine. Maybe you should shoot, have you thought about going to Atlanta? It was just like, now obviously not everybody said that, not even most, but when you heard it, like,
oh, wow. So it seems like a lot of what you've done is part of the journey and part of you. And I think it's a good kind of segue here to continue talking about your journey and by showing some of your pictures. So let's dive into some of your pictures right now, and we can continue your journey as a photographer and going up into modern day. So let's go into your first one, and why don't you kind of tell me the story behind this?
Oh yeah, brown passport. So I talked about the racing, or you asked me. This is the perfect segue because I was digital teching on a job in 2004 in Jamaica for a resort. I was the only black person and only female in the crew. Everybody left. I talk a lot, so everybody left the dinner table. We had our own private villa. Woo, right? The kitchen staff, one person came out and she said, she looked around to make sure everybody was gone and just looked at me, called the entire staff out and asked me how I got my job. How you got this job? Who you are? Where you come from? And in mid-chew, you realize why. It's because you're black or even half black or whatever. They see you as like, how do I get there? They see the white folks, they're like, oh, of course they get there, but how did you get here? You don't forget that. So fast forward a bunch of years, like 2014, 2015, I got fed up with the industry in New York because I was having a hard time. I got tired of being told, I love shooting for Essence. Yes, I've shot for them, and I love them, but Jesus, I got tired of certain things. I got tired of, people being typecast in certain roles and casting and all that. So I said, I'm going to Hawaii. I traveled around. I had a hookup with a free places to stay in Hawaii and Indonesia. This was in Malaysia. So I started shooting stories that kind of reflected these experiences, and Brown Passport came out of that. That's kind of what this is from. It's conversations on race, faith, and gender around the globe, and it's sharing experiences like the one I had in Jamaica. Traveling as a black traveler, which I didn't see a lot of at the time either. You asked me a moment ago about changes. In since Trump was elected, I started going overseas before that, but I noticed like almost overnight, when Black Lives Matter started, like around before Trump got elected, 2014, 2015, things started shifting a little bit, but not much. People didn't want to listen to you still. Oh, slavery's a long time ago. Your uncle was killed by cops. That was in the 60s. That's a long time ago, which did happen, by the way, and all that. So then you're just like frustrating. They're not listening. They're not listening. Then Trump gets elected. People start going, oh, it's country's racist in a way, and then Brown Passport was at that time starting to really be born. And so I was going around and interviewing people from my perspective as a black traveler, which I also started to see more of because of Instagram and because of this resurgence of black awareness or the black experience or minority experience in general, people marginalized experience in general. So I started interviewing people around the globe from the underrepresented perspective.
So I know that race and identity has a big part of your work, and Brown Passport explores a lot of that, and so does a lot of your work. So when you're as an artist questioning that stuff for yourself and trying to bring it to people's attention through your work, what's the thought process and angle you're actually bringing that work to people?
It was at first about my own experience based on the Jamaica thing, like as a minority in travel. I don't mean just a physical, like, but no, yeah, no, I guess I do mean that. A minority in travel. I didn't see a lot of Black travelers, and after that experience, I just thought, I got to tell that story. You're compelled to tell it, right? So, but then going around and meeting other people, I was compelled also to talk about gender. I'm a female, but also, you know, LGBT, someone from LGBTQ perspective, because I started to just see the challenges in travel that they might encounter, and misnomers, and people that are just underrepresented, you know. And I just felt like one way to do that, how it started, was just connecting with people. I started asking folks, do you see Black travelers? I was just hanging out. I tried in Hawaii, and I had a hard time getting in with local Hawaiians. I was not on the right island, I think, for that. But once I got to Indonesia, that changed. And it was more like, this is in Malaysia. Yeah, so I skipped around a lot in Asia, Southeast Asia, when I was there. And I started asking people like, hey, so you own this, and Tara Banks is the name of the place this guy owns. He's a trip. But I said, what do you think about Westerners, travelers? Like I started sharing, kind of getting to know people a little bit from who I am. They weren't as used to seeing somebody that looks like me coming through their stores or diving on their dive boats, you know? And so I just felt like at times it was easier to connect with some of them. Yeah, I shot this out in Indo too. So you talk to people, you kind of share your story because they're curious, because they don't see you a lot, right? And then when you tell them their story, it's like automatically they feel like, it seems like there's a kinship where they're ready to really share theirs with you. And so then I said, hey, so even though you're serving all these white Westerners and me non-white Westerner, what can we do better? I asked people, and they would tell you. And you start finding out, like how some people from the West might come over boastful or over this or over that, and may not even be aware of it, and just come off as kind of jerky. Not obviously all, but we could do better. You know, we could do better and not be condescending to somebody else ever, but especially not in their own country. You don't speak English. Actually, they do. And you're in another country. So what are you talking about? You know, it's just really was showing the ass of a lot of people. I'll put it to you that way, you know, who their true selves are. And I want to showcase that in order for change, because acknowledgement is the key to healing. Acknowledgement is the key to change. If you don't start at least showing that these things are real, nobody's going to have any reason to feel like they need to change it.
Yeah.
You know, this is from Chiang Mai in Thailand, because this is at Rambar. It's mostly trans, you know, performance bar, mostly male to female. And some people will just call them ladyboys, which I think is somewhat condescending, but it's kind of become a name. But, you know, even over there, I interviewed not this person, but another trans female. And she was just like, you know, she said she came to the States and somebody was like, with a bunch of other Thai women, but she was the only trans woman. Oh, all the girls, they're like you, right? Like they have that thing. Yeah, she said it like that. Like they have, you know, and she's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, yes, I'm trans, but like, no, these are regular biological females. He's like, oh, because I saw in the Hangover movie that a lot of, you know, there's a lot of ladyboys there. So I just figured you guys were all that. Like, what the hell? So a lot of, you know, what are we doing? Most of these films are coming from America, not all, obviously. A lot are coming from the States, though. Bollywood has its own issues. But, you know, we are teaching people, it's a form of our industry, too, what we do in photography, advertising, movies, all that, what people see around the world. If they don't meet these folks, if they don't meet a Black woman or a mixed race woman or every day or grow up with you, they're only going to see what they read about in books, see in TV and films and advertising. And if they keep seeing the same narrative, we need to change the narrative.
Yeah.
We keep seeing the same thing over and over again. You're only a basketball player. You only like hip hop. You should go to Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? You know, that same stuff. Yep. And it holds true in our industry too. When that's why I said the Atlanta thing, when they're just like, oh, you need to do this. You need to, I'm like, this is dumb. It holds true in the industry when I'm shooting a casting and people are laughing because they're trying to cast a jazz musician and the Asian guy walks in. Why are you laughing? What are you laughing at? What if he can play? What? A jazz musician doesn't look like a race. A basketball player doesn't look like a race. A soccer player doesn't have to be Chad. You know what I'm saying? Look around in Europe. They're not all Chads, you know, but in the States somehow they only want to cast Chads. Or you go or surfer, same thing. I was like, this is dumb. this is where I'm advocating, I think, in our industry that it's up to us to change that. I know, oh, the client this. Yeah, but if we all step up and say something to the client, at some point that is going to change. And it won't have to wait for Black Twitter to blow them up like H&M with monkey shirt.
Yeah, I think this is a good point, and excuse the pun, to dive into this part of your photography career.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how you got into shooting underwater photography and the whole dive thing, because I know I already know there's a story behind it.
Part of it is been shared, so that's good. Yeah, God, you're good at this. So I loved swimming pools as a kid, and I loved the beach, and I did a little body surfing, but I didn't actually know how to swim. We could paddle around. My parents don't know how to swim, right? The classic Black father, definitely he didn't know how to swim. But my mom learned the backstroke, but she, other than that, didn't know how to swim really, right? So my sister and I, though, loved the pool, so we figured out some stuff like doggy paddle, and one lesson so you don't kill yourself in a swimming pool, but that's about it. There was no open water happening. Fast forward, I was dating somebody who became a scuba instructor. This is how I got to stay in Hawaii and Indonesia at first, too. I stayed with him in Hawaii back and forth. I was going, back and forth. I mentioned that earlier, that story. He taught me how to dive. I was like, oh, this is a handicap that I can't even snorkel. You'd be on jobs, on fashion shoots, traveling in the Caribbean. Everybody jumps off the boat, and I stand there and look at him like, you guys are going to die. Like, I didn't understand how they could just jump off a boat and swim in the open water. I was like, and so, I would stay on the beach, but then, so I said, this is a handicap. So I took swim lessons at the Y. He taught me how to dive. We were together no more after that, but we were friends. And so I was diving with him, and he just kept pushing me like, you should just get your advanced. I'm like, dude, I can barely swim. Practice your swimming, get advanced, and we started shooting kind of together. You know what I mean? I started getting a camera. Oh yeah, that was fun. That was on a job actually. Yeah, that was a job. So fast forward, I started shooting for jobs underwater. But so I was like, oh well, I'll get a point and shoot underwater, and I was like, I'll just do regular open water. He said no, and he pushed. He's like, go to advanced, go that. I know you love it. Don't be scared or whatever. You can do it. You just need to practice. And he was right. So. Fast forward, I upgraded cameras. I was using his point and shoot at first, and then I upgraded to this. And this is the Sony A7S II. Yes, I'll call it out because I do love that camera. With the Icolite housing. A lot of people like to hate on Icolite.
I'm sure you like the announcement confirmation of the 3.
Yeah, true that.
The A7S3 I'm talking about. Finally being announced.
It has. I actually was waiting. I didn't know it was.
It was confirmed, not announced. Confirmed that it's coming.
I'm going to talk to you about it later because I need to get it. Okay. But that means I have to upgrade my housing, which sucks. But I'm like, if they don't do it soon, I got to do something. And thank you, Sony. So, anyway, I got this Icolite housing. Is a lightweight housing that's easier to me, in my opinion. First of all, it's cheaper than Nauticam. Nauticam to me is the best. I do have to say it's really great. However, it's heavy, and it for some folks might be cost prohibitive, but that is a lightweight one when you're traveling by yourself and doing these self-funded projects. So for the most part so far, that's changing soon. It was better to use the Icolite system, which is really robust and super solid. It's just a lot and lightweight. So ended up being easier to travel with, and shoot with. So, but as I got that, my now friend, was like, you should go get your dive master. What are you talking about? Through him, by the way, he moved long-term to Indonesia and was working as a cruise director for a dive shop, and told them about me. Nobody out there was shooting the land stuff like I was. I'm coming from New York where the work's good, right? And they were used to average work, but they weren't used to New York good work. And they were just like, oh, wow, but can you shoot underwater? I had just started. I was like, Ugh. So they said, look, if you want to learn, we'll give you, we'll make trades. And I ended up getting my advanced open water, and I did my dive master training for 3 months, working at the shop and shooting for the shop, and then getting hired for other dive shops to shoot for them. And that's how I got a lot of the underwater stuff and getting 300 dives in a year. You know what I mean? It was like,
I don't want to gloss over. You're more than a photographer. You do so much video work as well. Yeah. And so how did that balance, and how did that how did one kind of relate to the other one in terms of what you do in career and balance and all of that?
When I grew up with my mom and the thing, I was used to, we spliced film together. I shot with that Super 8. My dad had a Super 8 with sound. My mom's just was 8mm. I was used to that, but I just didn't take it seriously. And then when I lived in Chicago, I think late 90s, Canon came out with the XL1, and it was like a mini DV tape camera that one of my roommates was into film. She was a PA on major motion picture stuff. So they got me to PA on a couple of films out there, and I thought it was cool. Check the gate. I was a camera PA. Check the gate. I was like, this is dope. I was like, oh, okay, so I could do that. I just didn't take it like, I took it seriously, but I didn't take it seriously like that was going to be a career trajectory, because at the time those worlds were very separate, right? But I already understood. Obviously, I didn't go to film school, but I understood a lot about that just from growing up with the 8mm thing. But I was like, oh, let me play with this XL1. I'll shoot some fun stuff, and then I was shooting for Columbia University. I had a contract with them for a while, shooting for them. And then I said, my other roommate was a producer, and she had a Panasonic DV cam. And I said, look, can I borrow it? I want to shoot some interviews. I love interviewing people. College didn't ask me for that, but I said, y'all need to jump on this video bus. This was like maybe just before the stock market crash, like 06, 07, 08. And I was like, hey, let me I could see it coming. And I was kind of like interested in it. And then the Red One came out, the Canon 5D Mark II. I said, I really have to. Then I took it more seriously, and I got a Mark II. I shot spec commercial for Southern Comfort, for 5 Hour Energy on a Canon 5D Mark II, and I had a really good editor at the time, and I still do. But so then it was like, oh, let me get this Blackmagic. So that's kind of how it segued into all that. I shot a couple of short films with the Blackmagic. And then moved over to Sony for video. And I'm still pretty much on the Sony bus for video. And then I started shooting all this behind the scenes for photographers that I was assisting. And I pushed, let me be your DP. I shot a couple of music videos. I shot, so it just kind of segued into that. And then I started shooting some pharma, DPing for some pharma stuff. And then a lot of marketing videos for small businesses. I'm talking about a lot. And that's how I learned how to edit, which I hate editing, but whatever.
So at this point, are you doing out of necessity, out of love? Is it because I know, like, for me, I grew up loving cinema. Absolutely, film and TV was like it was probably one of the largest influences. And I grew up in front of a TV and a movie screen. That I think I knew about cinematographers well before I knew about photographers. For me, it was that kind of mood and kind of stuff like that. I see that you're extremely kind of driven by. I'm going to bring up a photo here quickly, and let's discuss this one, because we went by it and I want to come back to it. This photo right here, the style, the lighting. How do you get to here?
Well, I was actively in my dive master training when I did that. So I was diving 3 times, 4 times a day. 3 times a day, not 4, sometimes 4. Which they say you're not even supposed to, whatever. So that was in our pool. Later I shot stuff out in India, in the open ocean, which you saw. We showed a couple of them already. I said, I'm not going to be here without coming back. I need to shoot. Like, I just need, you kind of like when I was playing piano, it's like, you have to do this thing. It's like breathing. You can only hold your breath so long. You're like, I have to breathe. I had to play piano. I had to shoot. Film or stills or video. I love both, actually, because I said I grew up with this thing too.
So
right?
Do you think this is more influenced by film and cinema, the look of it, or is it
the horizontal aspect of it? I would say I stopped really shooting. I really noticed that I don't shoot vertically that much anymore. That stopped some years ago. I was really heavy into shooting vertically. Remember, Rolling Stone was my goal, right? The shape of that.
I was going to get back to that. It was like our final question. Did you ever make it to the cover of Rolling Stone?
I didn't. I did have a meeting with them.
Is it still a dream? Is it still a dream?
I don't know.
Or have you moved on from that? Because, I mean, this shot could be on the cover of Rolling Stone.
They said they loved my work, and they said they didn't want to pay me. That changed things for me. I didn't know how to react to that. I had a meeting with them, and they said, your work is great. It's perfect for us. We'll hire you. We won't pay you a dime. And I said, oh. So I know, oh, you do it for your career, but these mofos can afford it. We're not talking about, the little DJ magazines that I used to shoot for. And they even paid me $100. The DJ magazines I used to shoot for, fine. Or Philly Style magazine, they paid $500. Or, what? You can't even pay $50? you're Rolling Stone? Yes, I called their name out. That was not okay. Now, I'm sure they pay people, but they said, I kid you not, but we don't pay. Well, you pay somebody, don't you? What? Well, fine, I'll do some freebies, but does that mean you're going to pay me sometime? Like, I got no confirmation on that.
So in this industry of like people always asking, oh, it's well, being paid for by exposure and stuff like that. How often do you find that? And I mean, you're taking a stand against, I understand, like, people taking a stand, maybe, like, oh, if you do this for social media, it'll help you and you'll be, you'll get exposure, saying, no, are you crazy? I'm not doing that. But Rolling Stone, you do get the exposure, but you put your foot down, which I commend. And I think that's very important as a community, as an artist, we value that our work needs to have value, and to not give it value is really kind of something that is disgraceful, and especially a company like Rolling Stone. So
that's what I'm saying.
Where do you put that balance of, drawing the line?
If somebody doesn't have the money, do the work. Or if you really want to do the work, do the work. I really want to do the work. Of course, I really wanted to do the work with Rolling Stone. But I also turned down, I can say it now, it's God rest her soul, she's passed, Theo Westenberger. I got a call from her when I first moved here to assist for her. But when she didn't want to pay me either, I said, no, I've been assisting at that point for 15 years. And I was like, you could at least pay me $150. They wanted to pay like $50. I said, what? Another one with no promise and no sound of like that they were going to pay me a real rate. I was getting like $225, $250 in Miami. And I was like, my New York rent is twice the cost of Miami. And I have all this experience. I was referred over to you, which is why you called. And you're telling me you only want to pay like $50. I said, this is, oh, well, the exposure with Theo. And I know that a lot of people have gotten there that way. I don't believe in that, because I know that if she were shooting a freebie story for herself, I would have been all over that, and I would have paid to be on set. But if you're getting hired by an advertising client and you don't want to pay your second assistant at that time, what? The same thing with Rolling Stone. If it was, some other small magazine and I really wanted to shoot the work, they don't have the money. Okay. And even they pay you $100. That's what I'm saying. Rolling Stone, I'm not saying you got to buy a house for me, but what, for Christ's sakes, at least if you can say, we don't have a big budget, but we'll pay you a couple $100, I would have done that. But if they're straight up out of the gate talking about, we don't pay you, what kind of, excuse me, but what is that? I was pissed. So I was like, I don't want to support that system. And that may be why it took so long to get somewhere. It may be. But so
what advice would you have for, you've been in this 30 years, for someone that is starting out and confronting those kind of people, like, oh, you need to work for free, you need to work for free. And as a starting photographer, what kind of advice would you give to someone that is just like, I need to get experience, but, do I support a system that's not paying, or, it's like, it's very difficult.
Yeah, I shoot stuff for free still. Here's the thing. If you know that they are getting paid, if it's a company that's getting paid for your work, like say it's an agency. I mean, I really haven't had an ad agency not want to pay me. I haven't had that. But say it's somebody that's like, if it's a startup and they really don't have any money, that's different. We're all in this together. I want to work with people. But if it's somebody's ad campaign, okay, there was not a liquor, but what was it? There were it was a brand that was like a soda can or something, and they ended up collapsing, but they started to get pretty big. And even negotiate something with them. I knew that they had some money, and it's not about me trying to be in their pockets, but I just, you can't start out by being totally disrespected and having people just go, we're going to get over on you just because you're new and this and that. They knew that the work was good at that point that they were getting. And I was like, what the hell? You got to give something. I got shares in their company, something, you know? But I mean, even they eventually that got discussed. But if you're dealing with somebody like Coca-Cola calls you and says, oh, we'll shoot something for free, if it's spec, I did that with Southern Comfort. If it's spec, I did that with 5 Hour Energy and they ended up not using it. I get it. But if you're going to, the contract was, if you're going to use it, I get paid something, even if it's not $10 million, whatever it is, I get something. Right. But they're just trying to take the piss, as the Irish might say, on you. And that's what I did.
Yeah. It's unfortunate when a company is that large that they're using their, cachet to have someone work for free, which is really kind of shameful. It's really shameful.
That's shameful, and I mean, I get it. Sometimes you have to, it's hard. Like, it will be easier for you if you did do that. because then yes, you'll have that Coca-Cola, whatever. But Coca-Cola didn't do this to me, but I'm saying you would have that Rolling Stone stuff in there. And I didn't, and it's been a real struggle, and part of that might be the reason, but I just don't think it's right. And that's why I have to stand for what's right to me. I don't think it's right to typecast people on castings. I say something.
Yeah.
And maybe some people don't like that, but I have to say something. I'm sorry, but if somebody didn't say something, it's never going to change. And if somebody doesn't say no to Rolling Stone for that, that will never change. I'm sure they pay people. I'm sure, but they didn't. And okay, fine. Maybe they didn't see. I can't imagine they didn't see in my work something that would go in their magazine. I've seen stuff in their magazine that I had question marks on it. Like, no offense, guys, but I was like, if you're going to put that in there, you could definitely have put this in there and give me some dollars. You know? So
I know that I started to talk about it and cinema and basically your influences on film and stuff like that. And long way back to the question where I was leading to was, for me, as photographers, what we do is capture, we chase light, and it's the study of light and the way it hits our subjects, the way it hits, what we're photographing, the way it plays with our camera. When I was very young, I was going to be a filmmaker. I was heading off to NYU Film School. I was about to go into my first year, and my mother was the film commissioner of New York. And I was sitting at a dinner, and I was sitting right next to someone that I know you have talked to and filmed, John Waters.
Yeah.
I'm John Waters. What do I do? If you have to ask, why am I in the... Anyway, but I make movies sometimes. I write books. I do spoken word shows. I'm a photographer. I'm a filth elder. And really what I want to be is warden of a prison.
So I was sitting at a dinner with John Waters, and knowing his work and his crazy films and his, him being a photographer as well, I asked him, what advice do you have for a first, year film student going in and wanting to make cinema? He goes, study paintings, study light, study the greats like Caravaggio, study all of those. And for me, it was like kind of like, oh my God, that all right. Yeah, he's not saying like go out and watch this. He's saying study painting, study how the way light falls upon things. Your photos have a way of you're playing with light now. And as an artist, how are you crafting and working with light? And I'm going to bring up one of your photos here because obviously you're using flash and or a strobe in this. And why don't you talk about your style of when you use light, when you don't use light, and what you're kind of creating, and how has your journey as a photographer really influenced the way you play with light?
It came from weddings. I cannot say that enough. Weddings are the hardest thing there is to shoot, except for war correspondence, I would say, potentially. Yeah. And arguably, and some people, oh, well, the celebrity stuff. The reason the celebrity stuff is just because of the pressure, not because it's hard. I don't think so. No disrespect. I've been on those shoots. It's not, it's the pressure, and your time, and you don't know if they're going to do, what kind of mood they're in. And so that's a different kind of hard. But this, like wedding stuff, actually it's a pressure there too, but you have one shot. You will never be able to reshoot it. You have one chance. They are not used to professional set. They will not give you a second even frame, let alone, the whole day, right? To shoot just a couple of pictures. So I had to learn how to use lighting on the go. I was by myself for years with that. Now I bring an assistant or two for that. But this is like my wedding light. I went back to that. I used to use Lumidines for stuff. And then I have Profoto stuff now. And then I have a lot of video. I'm using video lights now. But so I incorporate video lights a lot now so that it's easier to blend in with the ambient with some of the video lighting. It's sometimes even faster, more efficient. But with this stuff, this is strobes. But I blended it in from knowing how to shoot film at weddings. And like, you need to be fast. That I had two portable strobes, one Godox here, one like with a diffuser on it, and then a Canon, because a lot of the still stuff I was using Canon 5D Mark III, and so I have the little Canon flash here with a diffuser on that, and then blend it with the available light coming in the door that was coming in the side, and that's what you see coming in the back here. So I do that most of the time. I usually, because I carry a lot of bags. Remember this? So that's not a joke. When I go traveling, I look like I'm moving somewhere. I carry a lot, which is tricky when you go into countries too, that they don't, the work permit thing, you got to get around that. It's kind of hard. But so it's nice to bring these porty lights. You can't really be bringing your photo stuff and not expect to get flagged at the airport, but those are great. You have to learn how to work fast and make it look beautiful without 3 assistants and the most expensive lights and the most expensive studio and the nice distro box. You have to learn how to do that, and learned how to do that from weddings. When you do have all this stuff, you got your catering and you got, your fancy, you got these assistants, and you're like, well, this shit is easy. You know what I mean? Like, it's compared, I mean, not really, obviously, because now.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. Because
yeah,
running out and doing events or weddings, stuff like that, you have to be so attuned and fast in your shutter and nailing things, and there's no second chance. But if you like working on a film set where there's a whole team of gaffers and lighting people, you just point your camera and it's just gorgeous lighting on people. There's beautiful. It's like kind of like a holiday. It's like,
I mean,
it's all set up for me.
Meaning to discuss it with, it's where it's harder for me is that you're limitless. When I lived in Chicago, you had limits. We had a rental house, Helix and Calumet at the time. Now it's different, Pro Photo something. But Helix and Calumet were there. They're very Speedotron heavy, right? Speedotron and Balcar is big lights on them. So things that blow up in your face. Ugh. But other than that, you were limited on your rentals. It's not like LA and New York. And most places are still like that, limited on if they rent anything at all. Kit Split and Share Grid, God bless you. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot of, even Calumet went out of business now, right? So there's not a lot of spots. So you had to, whatever you had to work with, you owned. These people are not billionaires. Not everybody is a trust fund baby. I know I wasn't, right? So you got to work with only what you have. But the harder part when I came to New York about this and all the assistants and all this was you're limitless. There's no excuse. That's the hard part. There's no excuse not to have something except for the budget, but even then they're kind of like, well, why can't you just get this? You can get anything you want to. It's almost like going to the grocery store and having 5,000 peanut butters to choose from. You're there for 2 hours, scratching your head with a headache and a migraine, just not understanding which one to choose. That gets hard. I think that's the hardest part about this stuff. And to be fair, again, if you have a person of note on set, you mentioned John Waters. He was great, but we had to send the makeup artist home because of a situation with him. So there is a level of hardness that comes with that. You have to be really good with people with that. It's not even just about the lights. You got to really have your stuff. We were working with Danny Glover once, and if you don't have, they didn't give us enough time to do lighting on that, which sucked. But if you don't, that's another story. But if you have to really, you probably will only have like a minute with these folks. So in a way that's similar to a wedding where you don't have a second chance and you really have to get it right that time. It's just that you fortunately have a bigger team and you have bigger toys.
Yeah. I want to jump into this next series of photos, and why don't you tell me the story behind them, and as I bring them up here.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. That's on Brown Passport. I was on a motorbike. Not seeing a lot of black travelers. Again, after the Trump era, it happened to coincide with when Instagram was blowing up really huge. It had been out, but it was really getting huge with the travel thing. Now the word influencer was starting to become a word. And black folks, especially younger ones, were like, I can travel too. Whereas before, you just didn't see that as much. Not really. But you're seeing it more and more now. So I saw this guy on a motorbike. I flagged him, and immediately he knew. He's like, and we both, black traveler, like so crazy. It's like, he even said that when I interviewed him. So it's for Brown Passport, I shoot interviews, write, even though I'm dyslexic, and do portraits, obviously. So I shot his portrait there. He had his own travel company. He's only 21 years old, but he's from Italy. But anyway, you can look on Brown Passport and see his story. But here, this is that Godox light. I shoot it like it's a pro photo. I took off some of the diffusion, but I'm counteracting the sun.
Have you seen their new one that looks exactly like the pro photo?
Godox? No, I haven't.
Yeah, they have a new one that looks exactly like the B10s.
Well, then I might buy. I'm very much happy with the Godox, except for they overheat at times.
The new one that they have out, I've heard some good things. I use the ProPhoto B10s and love them, but the Godox is just such a great. I mean, for what they're putting out,
great light.
It's
look
it's
at that is Godox, folks. I used to use Lumidyne and swear.
What type of modifiers are you putting on your lights when you're traveling?
That is just the old school. I do have a softbox for it, but I usually don't use it in travel, and it's so far away from it. I just hit them with like a hard
light.
Yeah, but there's like these little discs, like these.
Yep, the diffuser.
I put 2 of those in there. And sometimes I bounce it, like I have a reflector, and I'll turn the light into it and go. I go bare bulb a lot too, actually.
Whoa, hey, whoa! This is a family show.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, put some clothes on. So bare bulb, that's what I loved about Lumidyne. Yes, I used the Quantums. Quantums I had some trouble with. It might have been user error, to be frank with you. Also, Godox, but light, just a little bit of fill. I almost didn't use much on there. That was
Do you
for,
prefer always bringing some light and filling and using light and
yes,
sculpting with light?
yes.
Yeah, me too. I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent. Yeah.
And strobe is better when you're in the sun because these LEDs don't do jack diddly squat when you're out in the sun unless you have like a truck, you know, a grip truck or something. So this is actually Old Dirty Bastard's son, YDB, Young Dirty Bastard from the TV show Growing Up Hip Hop. So I was shooting something for them. Yeah, this is I think last year, but yeah. So that was out in Indo. This is the underwater housing. This I used natural light. I didn't take the light on. I got an LED light for the housing now. I don't yet have a strobe for it. I just use the continuous light because I shoot so much video with it. And now I will need to get both now that I'm going to have to trade up housings. You just told me the new camera came up. But this was, she does some modeling. She's actually a makeup artist on photo shoots and stuff too. But she's also a performance artist as a mermaid. So I shot some underwater mermaid stuff with them that I still have to release. But I just utilized, the sun was actually setting over here on my left, camera left. So I utilized that and it's bouncing. You're in the water. That's kind of a bonus. It's bouncing right off the water like a fill card. If you can see, there's a little bit of light underneath her there. So why not use nature when you can? I like having silver cards or underlighting a little bit. Like I mentioned, those two lights that I used for the girl.
Yeah.
So this kind of does that, right? You know, for the
were there certain photographers that were influences for you, like it was like that you kind of modeled? As we all start, we kind of
and David LaChapelle.
Yeah.
But not that I shoot like.
Was it LaChapelle just because the grandiose and like never seen something like that, or was it the lighting? What was it for? Because
lighting. I mean, the grandiose stuff goes without saying, right? But the lighting, I wasn't a big fan of all the retouching. I'm not as much into that, but. The lighting, this is under light too. I had 4 lights on that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. 4. Yeah. Because I bounced one off the ceiling just to fill in the back a little bit. And then I had one on the floor with the soft box. This is where you see it on the bottom on the collar. And you can see like 2 lights underneath. I had one up, one on the bottom, and then one on the top hat above the soft boxes, like mini soft boxes. So the LaChapelle thing was more because I think this goes back to, in a way, race being the different one, not in high school, but after that, when I got to college, you look around and you get into the real world and not that many, there's more mixies out there now, but back then my parents married only 3 years after it was legalized for interracial marriage. That wasn't a popular thing.
In a world, in a country that's supposed to be so progressive and so ahead, we're so backwards on so many things. And just to think that in your lifetime, you can say before it was legal. That just is mind blowing. And I think that brings us sort of to a conversation of where we're at right now. And I want to go into the video work that you're doing, but let's kind of quickly talk about going into this period of where we are as a nation, as a country, as as artists. What were you doing right prior to COVID? Like realizing that this is not just a flu. This is something that's going to change the world.
I have to be honest, like I was not a naysayer, but I did not understand. I quickly got on board, as you may be familiar with now. I am working with I have an OSHA, card and stuff, and I'm doing like respiratory training and all that. I'm working with an OSHA compliance, like authorized trainer for COVID safety in the workplace, designed a class based on that. But that is not where I was before the COVID crisis was really taken seriously. It's not before it hit, it's before it's taken seriously. I was shooting the Black Ski Summit in Idaho, which became the 2nd largest COVID hotspot.
And what was that, March, or was that?
First week in March.
First week in March.
It was February 28th to March 7th, something like that. I flew out, this is a leap year. I flew out on the 29th.
Yeah, because I remember my last real commercial shoot was March 10th. And that's when the world kind of changed after that. And suddenly everything I had planned for a year was canceled or postponed, or, it's unbelievable. So you were in Aspen and then.
No, in Sun Valley, Idaho.
Sun Valley, Idaho. And then you're there and you finish up and come back. And then what happens? Or you come back to New York?
During the thing, it was South by Southwest is getting shut down. I was
Right.
like, why are they closing South by South? I mean, I was so busy. Honestly, Travis, that shoot was so crazy.
Yeah.
I was running, you know, because I was shooting both. I was hired by an entity to shoot that, but I also was shooting. I was double shooting because I was shooting for Brown Passport also, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, and I had to get double the stuff they wanted and then my own stuff. And and I took a ski lesson. That was the other thing, how I didn't swim before. I started skiing on this trip. So because of that, you know, so anyway, I barely had time to focus on anything. And I just saw something about South by South. I was like, why are they shutting down? COVID, what is that? And I got back, and the co-working space that was then open, they're closed now, a part of, they started, well, we're not going to have, they were closing anyway, but they were like, we're not going to have a going away party. I was like, why? 3 of us in the office were like, why? What are you talking about? We love working with each other and the creative collaboration we have. And they're just like, this COVID thing, it's really take it seriously. We just looked at each other like, are you kidding me? Well, I had a job for Ferrari that was on the books. I was supposed to be shooting a marketing video for them, not stills, and I was supposed to be shooting for an ad agency down in Miami and like at the tennis open down there. And a Lexus job was on the table. Mm-hmm. I know. Whoops. Right. I hope they come back. That's all I'm saying. You know,
I think you're following up on that one.
I was like, the rent needs to get paid, you know? So that, and I had I will say I still do weddings sometimes. You know, I'm really good at them. I just do them under a different name. Don't be embarrassed if you do them, folks. Don't be shy.
Honestly, some of the stuff creatively that wedding photographers are doing now is mind-blowing.
It is, yeah.
In terms of setting up some of these shots and the creativity of it, but that's a whole different discussion. So
yeah.
when do you get back to
tanked, so I was just like, Liza, you know, what do I
when do you get back to New York? And did you start self-quarantining? Did you stay at home? Like how did your life change throughout
what
this?
happened was I was at this office, is exactly what I was telling you. I was a little bit in denial, and then I had to scramble, and I was like, what are we going to do for work? The things are getting pushed back. We weren't even sure. I didn't even get the nix on the job that was supposed to be in Miami, because we were supposed to shoot April 1st on that one. The Ferrari thing, that got pushed back pretty quick. The Lexus thing was on hold and they got pushed back. I was still waiting. I was like, please let this other job happen. And then we know what happened. The city got shut down. And that's when they were like, oh. So at that point, I was supposed to have sinus surgery because I have issues with diving for that. Now,
elective surgeries put off.
Yeah, I was supposed to be March 18th.
And you're back in New York at this point?
I've been in New York the whole time. So, you know, I came back on March 9th and I just kind of got stuck. And so I live with 7 people. So that was another situation.
What's that dynamic like when you're suddenly like, you know, here I am, there's this unseen virus going around, and now wear masks, don't wear masks, you know, be around, stay away from people, stay 6 feet from people. You're living with 6 people. Are they going out? Are they taking it seriously? What was that dynamic
2
like?
people are at risk. They say that, one especially. So, I mean, we're all at risk. That's the joke. That's the misnomer. Yeah. I'm sorry. I mean, I personally was not afraid for myself. I am afraid more for others. I do not want to be the person that makes somebody else sick. You know, I'm sorry. Of course, I don't want to get sick and die either, but I really would care more about, you know, not passing it to someone else, you know? Yeah. And so when I know that a couple of people that I live with had that situation, that was, and I lost 3 roommates at that time too. And my name is on the lease. So I had to fill 3 rooms by April 1st.
I mean, you're talking about like in any situation, life is stressful. As an artist, as a photographer, life is stressful. Now you're talking about putting, you know, a house where you're not having income coming in, people moving out, you're not being able to make rents, and are they going to be forcing, you know, so this is mounting. Now you're talking about politics. Now you're talking about suddenly, you know, we have the whole Black Lives Matter kind of pop up in these protests.
Yeah.
So where are you suddenly when everybody is out marching? Are you going out? Are you staying in? Both.
I did go out, but I had to do a part-time. Remember I told you about all those like carriage driving and bartending? Yeah. Obviously that's not happening right now, right? But I'm good with tech, so I had to do some things online to you know, make it happen. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I shot an ad job, believe it or not, for a German university about a month ago. So that was huge. Wall Street Journal bought my images from the ski summit. So that was huge. You know what I mean? Like things like that. And now I don't know if I can say the company yet, but they're buying one of my brown passport stories. So that's also things are actually the brown passport thing because of all these years of trying to talk to people. I even had a book out. I couldn't even get a publisher then because I said, oh, well, this is even really relevant now. It's about race. You know, we're past that. We have a black president. Ah, really? It was about mixed race people, a portrait book. You know, it was 2012 or 13 something when I tried to put it out and they didn't want to have it. That's one of the catalysts why I left and went to Hawaii. I was so mad over that. I worked for years on it. And then to tell me you need a famous person in here. Otherwise, you know, this subject matter is maybe not even relevant. I was like, you are blind. And I just got so angry. I couldn't take it anymore, you know. But all these years I've been talking about it and then killing myself I went into very deep debt on brown passport. And so, yeah, that was a stressful thing. But now with post-Trump being elected was a big jump in people showing their ass. And I said, you know, and it's just not new. They are not new. They've been there. They're just coming out the closet, right? And all these other microaggressions are coming out of the closet that aren't even as serious as somebody getting hanged or a snuff film, you know, which is disgusting, obviously. But there's a lot of other things that are just not. Why would a black person think that I wouldn't do as good of a job because I'm a black photographer? Why would they even say that? Yeah. You know, what is going on in our society that people think that an Asian guy can't be a jazz musician? Like, these things are huge, actually. All this stuff comes together. So now with the protests, I got a lot of phone calls because I have been pushing
First of all,
brown
you're wearing
passport.
so many hats in this. And so there must be so many conversations going on in your own head. A, I'm a female. A, I'm a black female, a woman of color. A, I'm a photographer, you know, that has, you know, a viewpoint and that wants to shoot this, but also I want to go out and get my voice heard. And I mean, like there's so many angles of this. Where's the discussion going in your head and what hat are you wearing when?
This is another one that's hard to mention that I might get slapped for, but that's okay. It's in some aspects of the I don't want to say just a black community, but in somewhere in that world too, as a mixed race person, you can be perceived differently too. You know, you're not dark enough, you know, like you're light skinned, right? Yeah. So there's a whole nother thing going on there.
Just another aspect or
angle.
Yeah.
So, you know, somebody sees me wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt, you know, it's good, but then sometimes you'll get like, yeah, and then sometimes I don't know. It's some things. Are you really black? You know, it's you know, there's that too. It's annoying. You know.
Are you going out protesting? Are you
I
shooting
did go,
it? Are you going out with your camera and capturing things?
Because of the side hustle that I had going on, I didn't actually have time because it was very low pay. The thing that I was doing online, I'm talking like it's below brow, but I had to get any kind of supplement because the government hands out some money, but. Yeah. After having produced brown passport and and then losing the roommates, I finally got some. But a lot of the stuff, I was at the brink. I was like gonna be homeless. I'm just being very real here. I was gonna be. There was not. I had nothing left. Not only nothing left, but I was negative nothing left. All the shit you borrowed from other people had to be paid because they need their money back now, and those ad jobs that were gonna pay it did not show up. So I was like. Yeah, so I was inundated with just trying to do that and then actually trying to get us back to work safely because I did have that ad job that I shot for the German University. It was outside, but I saw it coming and I knew about my friend with he's been in infection control for 10 years, you know, 11 years. And so we worked together, came up with a course. So all of our time was just doing that. I didn't actually have time to go out and protest because I'm producing all this other stuff. But I did go out a couple times. I didn't want to cover it to shoot. I wasn't compelled to do that. There were so many other people out there covering it. Everybody and their mama's, grandma's cousin had a camera. I felt like I was in the way if I was doing that. I just was like, I had my camera, but I was like, you know, it's a different mindset. I've shot that stuff before. I had I have a press badge to do all that. And I was like, this is not my story. I'm going to focus on brown passport. It's my story, but I'm saying, let somebody else do that. You already have enough going on. Focus on brown passport. I started talking on panels about brown passport. And now I have 8 video edits due. I don't know how many, but I'm going to do it due on Friday because of a new YouTube network that's also going to be on Roku. That's going to be, my show is going to be on there. Brown Passport's going to be on there. So not that I'm getting paid for that yet, but you know, again, it's all that. So that has been interesting. When I said early in the beginning that it's gotten better ever since Trump got elected. One person recognized it. This one photographer that I was assisting for a long time. He said, he kind of said, "You're probably glad he got elected." Of course, I'm not glad he got. I'm sorry if I'm being political here. I don't want to be, but I was like,
No, this
no,
is this
I
is
don't mean to be
open
that way.
talk. You know,
Yeah.
it's as open as
but
you
I
want
said,
to
no,
be.
of course not. I will say that people were complacent. Not everybody, obviously. That situation woke some people up. Does it really take a snuff film? By snuff, I'm talking about the George Floyd film, a murder film,
Yeah.
for people to wake up and realize, does it take somebody that extreme for people to see that what we've been talking about? Because people just stopped talking in the 90s. They just kept it in themselves. They just kept the conversation on BET. They just kept the conversation at the barbecue, kept the conversation at the family reunion, because nobody else was listening. Right. And then if you speak up on set, now you're fired because you're the loudmouth one that doesn't like the client picked the Chad is in the same role, like I talked about earlier in the casting situation. Because I say that stuff. I'm like, don't do that. They don't like it, but it's true. What are you doing? What are you doing? Don't wear a monkey shirt. And what are you doing? And so now all of a sudden, I feel like we have a really great chance of people listening. And now all of a sudden people are looking at Brown Passport as like, oh, I'm like, where y'all been at for the last bunch of years that I've been producing this work and starving, eating PB&J sandwich, seriously, like hungry, because all the money is going to producing this stuff.
Well, this is the perfect point where I'm going to show everybody one of your Brown Passports.
Oh,
so
okay,
let's take a look.
Just Eric wanted to get a sense of what you really thought about the experience at the museum today.
Oh boy, I think there's a lot that I don't know, to be honest with you. And growing up in white suburban America in the school system, there's a lot that I was told, and there's a lot that was really left out. And so I think today was an eye-opening experience for me. Cliff, what did you think about the museum?
Well, the total range of emotions. My emotions have been all over the place. Anger, sadness, tears, a lot of different emotions, but truly trying to understand where we have come from as African American and as a country. And trying to get a good grasp around that, but trying to be able to see a better way forward and knowing how we can do things better together. I think a lot of the things that we're dealing with today is the fact that there are a lot of people that are talking, not a lot of people are listening. And that's part of the challenges. And I think that's one thing here with the museum is that you get a chance to really truly hear stories, you get a chance to read about them, learn, and be able to understand what people have gone through. And usually once we listen to each other, it gives you a better perspective of being able to understand how you can move forward or even if you can come together. A lot of times we talk about racial reconciliation, but I always say, hey, let's focus on racial unity because we can't reconcile until we've first been united.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the things I noticed is how fresh the wounds still are from the civil rights era. And, there's been a continuous stream of racism and injustice, and that stream hasn't stopped to this day. It feels like it does. In the 90s, growing up as a teenager, I thought things were fine, and now all of a sudden things aren't fine, and so I'm a little bewildered at first. But as I talk to friends like Cliff and ask hard questions that maybe I don't want to hear the answer to, or maybe he doesn't want to address with me because we can't find a safe place all the time. But when you find a safe place to discuss that, you realize, oh, hey, it was Cliff's dad that experienced things that I've only read about in history books, and so it's really fresh for him, and he's my friend, and so it needs to be really fresh for me. This sparking questions in my head and opening my eyes to things that I didn't realize before makes me ask other questions about other people groups and other races and people who weren't raised in the country that I was raised in and the context that I was raised in, and want to see, hey, where are they coming from? What's their life like? What's their history like? What's their culture really like? And when I see things from their perspective, I can understand what makes them tick, It's not, just because it's different from me doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just something that's different.
From my perspective, I just really, I don't have anything to add. I think he knocked it out of the park. I think he did a good job.
That's great.
I just think that's so beautiful, and to see that is wonderful. Tell me about that experience shooting this, and you know, and a little more about Brown Passport and the future of Brown Passport.
Yeah, I mean, you got to double dip a little bit, right, to keep the lights on and to pay for cameras and to continue to travel to shoot the stuff. So that co-working space that I had, that close-up shop now, the parent company is still around, Cheapo Air, right? And they hired me. I pitched to them, you know, something with some of the stories. And here we go with it wasn't like, they're on the bus. They're really great, actually. But unlike some other people, you know, shoot Atlanta or shoot for Essence, they're like, well, we'll do it for Black History Month. As if it's not relevant for other months. But I love y'all. I'm happy with the cheapo. Y'all were good to me. I'm just saying. So thank you. But, you know, just think about that. We can do it in other months too. But I realized their perspective on it because of timing. And okay, fine. So I said, I really want to go shoot a story at the African American History Museum in DC. I could do it as my own Brown Passport story, but let me shoot something that's more for YouTube. That video that you just saw is on my version of Brown Passport. I interviewed Dr. Kinshasa Holman Conwell. I'm trying to remember. I'm blanking on the name, which I'm embarrassed. But she's the deputy director of the museum. So I got an interview with her. I contacted the media department there because I used the Cheapo Air name because I said, hey, I'm shooting a story. They're going to run it on Cheapo Air. They did. It did quite well with them. So that, you know, financed a few things there for me. But I went down there with the double thing. I went saying, okay, I got to kind of do like not a commercial for this place, but a little bit of a travel story that's working for Cheapo Air or like an airline type of thing. And then also get something that's with Brown Passport, which is these two guys. So I'm in there. I got in there early with a customized tour, like before they opened. And I was shooting and then just like waiting on this interview with the deputy director. And then I said, yeah, but that's going to be kind of in the can. Like it's going to be very much like, this is that. It's almost a commercial. I said, I got to get something a little bit deeper than that. And I sat down and took one break for like 10 minutes and just waited. I just looked around. Sometimes you just go with your gut, right? And I just looked around. I said, I'm supposed to sit here for a second. And then I see these two guys sitting there with a group of friends. They came in a bus, like a little minivan from Philly. And I said, oh, I'm from Philly. That whole story back, you know, kind of from Philly, right? Oh, not really, but, you know. And then they're like, oh, he goes, oh, I'm from Carolina, actually, but I've been living in Philly, the white guy of these two. And then they're like, yeah, you know, they're also about 10 years apart, maybe 15 years apart. So it's interesting. It's somewhat intergenerational. And then I said, you know what? Without telling me now, this is what I'm going to ask you later. Can I meet you at the end of the day out front of the museum? Because I can't shoot that in here, but I can shoot that with the museum. It's beautiful in the background. It's a nice day. And they said, yeah. So we went out there and that's what I said, interview each other. I said, what do you think about the museum? Don't answer me right now. And you don't answer me right now. And don't you dare talk to each other about it right now. But can we do it on camera? And they said, yeah. And it was fabulous.
So what's some of the other video work you've done that you can tell me about?
The first short film was cool. No, the SoCo commercial was cool. That was like a few years ago with the 5D. That came out really nice because I utilized these back then Pro Photo hot lights before all these fancy LEDs came out. We're on a budget, but you know, that was one of those not free, but almost free jobs, right? Because it was a spec thing, right? But it was just one of those that I did use for my book. I think it looked really good because we had at least a little bit of a budget to hire like a couple of actors and we got the space for free, but still, you know, I didn't make money on it, but you know what I mean? It was something. And that was sometimes where you decide that was really worth it. And being that it's spec, I knew they weren't actually using it as an ad campaign. It's not like they're taking the piss on me, right? If they did, I'm like, give me the money. That was the thing.
Yeah. Let's take a look at it.
SoCo and Cola. Ah, the Beauregard. Good choice.
I do declare, I'm Beauregard LeBeau, a totally fictional character that lives in your cocktail. What you're witnessing is a declaration of individuality. Order a tall, dark, and refreshing Southern Comfort Cola. You'll be the belle of the ball. Just watch.
I
do declare.
Find SoCo on Facebook and tell them Beauregard sent you.
So I do declare, did you come up with this whole
My
concept of
friends,
Beauregard and
we did. I have two really good writer friends. But the collaboration was nice. You know, we were just like, how are we going to make, because they said, well, they wanted us to do everything front to back, the writing, the whole shebang bang, right? So we're like, oh, and to be fair, I came up more with obviously the lighting, a lot of the design of, okay, let's put this way, let's do some of the direction, but primarily the direction was Stefan Pildes, and then Brent Van Dyke, who actually plays the bartender in there, came up with the tagline, I do declare. He's a Kentucky boy. And SoCo, it's supposed to be something obviously south of the Dixie line, right? So we had to incorporate. They just asked us to make it somewhat Southern, make it, give us a call. You know, like a call is like a Cape Codder is the name of a drink. Give us a call for Southern Comfort and Coca-Cola. So, you know, SoCo and cola. And then we just, the I do declare thing with the Southern Belle. You know, but we tried to mix it up. Maybe that's why they didn't use it too. Mix it up, like not just have all white folks, and notice how we did the casting there too with the guy at the end. You know what I mean? Like it's trying to incorporate different things there. Yeah. How do you even get it in?
A lot of fun. Who did the styling? Who came up with all the styling?
Yeah. Actually, the girl that you showed a picture of, the mermaid girl with the she was the makeup artist on that.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so that was cool. But there's other stuff. I shot a short film that was part of a film festival. That was great. We had really great writers on that. I strictly just DP'd on that. I didn't direct it. And, you know, there you have different lanes, right? So I didn't do any direction on that one. But
awesome.
That was fun.
Quick pause here and go into the next thing. So this is going to bring us towards the kind of rounding up of this interview. And I want to ask a couple questions. Then we're going to go into a speed round. Honestly, as a photographer, this is such a difficult profession, and it can be so up and down and so tasking. What kind of motivates you to keep going, and what's your driving force on saying, no, I'm a photographer, I'm going to do this, whether it's hard, whether it's easy, and I have to do it?
It's like breathing. I have to do it. That's it.
Yeah, I have to say, you know what? For me, it's the same thing. It's like I did so many things in my life, and once I discovered photography, it's like I can't imagine a life without it. It's a part of, an appendage of me. It's a part of me, and it's people want to make it so complicated, but it's no, I have to. It's just like
I have to.
I got to do it.
You know, and this may or may not be an extension of the answer, maybe. But before, when you had asked me about influences, I mentioned LaChapelle, and I was trying to get into where I saw him as, because in the 90s, I didn't have piercings or tattoos or any of that stuff, right? But back then, it was it was a counterculture. And I was part of a counterculture just by birth, I think, to a certain degree. But also, I was the brown girl that liked new wave music, you know? And I was like, I liked all the other hip hop stuff too. I liked a lot of things, but I was also the brown pianist. You know, you were kind of the outsider, or I was. So I saw David LaChapelle's work as showcasing what at that time I saw as outsiders, the trans, like Amanda Lepore and things like that. A lot of the subject matters in the way he went about it, not just the sets, but I just saw it as this, like, I was into nightclubbing at the time, mostly gay clubs. So I saw this like extra gay lifestyle being showcased in a world that I saw as a button down, white, straight men's world, that even gay marriage still would. But do you remember that? It was people were still afraid, like, you can't say you're gay, you have AIDS now. Like, remember that? I saw that. I related to that work as more who I was, not so much the lighting style or any of that stuff you do. I loved it. It was more like being the outsider. So that's kind of here I still am. I feel like we still have an opportunity, especially with something like Brown Passport, or to change narrative. I still feel like I'm compelled. I have to shoot, like it's like breathing. But even in commercial work, like, you know, you'll see I did the Carousel Tourism Board thing, which was, I love all that stuff, right? So, but I mean, if you can get to anybody that you're working with and share stuff with them, maybe you have an opportunity to help them change a narrative in their advertising.
When you're about to actually hit that shutter button, what is it that's going through? What do you look for? What's your main inspiration? Are you looking for an emotion? Are you looking for the light? It's a combination of, like, what draws you to hit that shutter button?
Energy. I think that goes back to weddings. If it's a person, if it's when I was doing products, and sometimes you still have to, right? Like, nope, again, I'll shoot it, guys. I'll be excited to shoot. you know, but when you do that, you're not waiting on energy. It's more about the lighting and is this sitting in the right place? Do we need to tweak it, get tweezers out and do all that? But with people, it's an energy thing. You just talk to them, and half the time you're not even got your eyeball in the thing. I mean, you kind of do, but then you kind of just direct and go for it. You know, this is where it's nice to have an external trigger. If you can do that, you know? Yeah.
So a question that I like to ask is, and it could be from anybody, and it can be regarding, you know, just something that is important in life or pertaining to photography. What's one of the best single pieces of advice you've ever received? And that, you know, it's one of those pieces of advice that you want to pass on, whether to a friend or a family member, or that you carry with you and always repeat, because there's always something in our head that we always repeat because it made an impact on us. What, do you have one of those?
I don't know. It was a lot of discouraging stuff out there. But it might be, you know, like the don't give up. I mean, I've been told I'm tenacious, and that was good. You know?
I mean, I know one of the things, and I've said it on other episodes, is like one of the simplest things my dad ever said was, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen a lot more than you speak. And that has always resonated in me, to listen to people. And it wasn't that I shouldn't speak or voice myself. It's just you need to listen to others. And that one piece of advice always went very kind of, and one of my earlier episodes, Megan Allen, who was one of the first Sony Alpha females, woke, and she basically said one of the amazing piece of advice she got was, when you first wake up, create before you consume. And I thought that was a beautiful thing, because we usually reach for our cell phones or turn on the TV. It's like, no, do something for you, and don't just instantly kind of start consuming other information and other things. But, you know, so those two things were kind of like, you know, for me were things that kind of resonate with me, and that I want to, you know, always kind of like pass on. Was there anything like that from like your parents or your or, you know, a mentor or?
No, I love my parents, but my dad still doesn't understand why I didn't become a teacher.
Have they accepted that?
No.
No.
No, my dad didn't. He still doesn't,
Yeah.
because it's like, you went to school he put a few grand, which I'm thankful for, into the college. I'm talking literally like a few, you know, we didn't have much, right? But we had something, but not much. So he just did a few, but it's like, it's just, he's still like, well, that, you know, you can't waste it. You should have just, why didn't you just, I don't understand. He'll just stab still. We're close. Okay. But it's just, so there was no advice in that world. He doesn't really believe in it. My mom was the more like the picture taker, the creative, but she's scared. So, but even still, she'll say, you know, when it's not okay, when I have a hard time, or when somebody didn't buy when I had to self-publish a book, or when now I have a deal with Brown Passport before I got that deal, or before the Ferrari thing came through, or before, you know, I made it a point to tell them about that, because before that they were like, well, that's good, but can't you just shoot weddings? Or they're just worried because they just don't see it.
Yeah.
It's taking so long. It's taken so long to get anywhere that they're just like, well, it's not going to work. So when are you going to give up? And they didn't understand that. So I didn't have that kind of encouraging advice there, other than go get another job. And with people in the industry, it was tricky, because there's a lot of go to Atlanta. That's just real. I mean, I don't really hear the go to Atlanta thing anymore. I did hear it not that long ago, but now people are changing really recently, because the Trump and the 2016 election, and escalating now into the second wave of Black Lives Matter, people are actually going, oh. And so rather than advice given, they're asking me questions.
So to build upon that one part where you just went there, with this whole kind of awakening to Black Lives Matter. And, you know, it's like, for me, like I grew up, my mom left Texas, and when she was sort of the black sheep. She left at a young age and raised me in New York, and I remember going back to visit relatives, and I had an uncle, and we were in a room. And I remember at one point he just used the N-word like it was like saying like breathing. It was just, and my mother looked at me, and I was very young, and she goes, "Travis, go outside the room." And I was listening from the other room, and I heard her say to him, "Bob, if you ever use that word in front of my son again, you will never see him again, and I will never bring him here again, and that will be the end of this." And I knew from a young age the power of that word. And I grew up knowing, like, and I think it's very difficult for, these people that like are fighting, like, no, all lives matter. It's like, that's a nice statement, but they don't really understand the gravity of it. And when I was younger, I kind of fought, like, it's like, oh, why should there be, harsher, crime, punishments for hate crimes? Because I'm like, a crime is a crime. They all should be punished. Like, for me, everybody's equal. And like, I was always fighting, like, everybody. I never saw this or the other. And I always, like, I kind of was like the misfit in school. So I always was more worried about how everybody else was interpreting stuff like that. So how do we get to that conversation of waking people up, that when you're saying Black Lives Matter, or the conversations that we need to have today, like, I understand that difference. There's a huge difference between saying all lives matter and Black Lives Matter. And how do we keep this conversation going? And what is your advice for, what is your hope in this? How is it different? Like, what advice would you leave people with on this?
People should listen without rebuttals. I mentioned, and my uncle was killed by a cop in the late 60s. He was left for dead, as paraplegic, and then died of the injuries eventually, like a couple of years later, right? So the thing is, my dad's side, obviously. So I would say people should listen, because the thing is, acknowledgement is the key to healing, a key to healing. I say but for some people, a key to healing. And I may take some flack for this, but I think it's a form of a part of what could be reparations. Non-financial form of reparations is just to listen, just to acknowledge. When people start acknowledging, you mentioned that your dad said 2 ears and a mouth. That's a good one. I'll never forget that one. I think that's great. Because I talk a lot. I need to probably take that advice myself, to be honest.
I have to remind myself all the time.
Yeah, I had to, but the thing is, when we do that, because somebody tells you something, I've caught myself doing it. Oh, well, I had that too. You don't want to discount somebody else's experience. I've done that, and that's not really fair, right? So, but especially when it comes to something like this, that gets to be more challenging, because it's so huge. It's just on such a large scale and across the globe, that the fact that none of it has ever been recognized, and people have been taught incorrect histories for generations. You start acknowledging that, you kind of have to start over. That's a big one. Just listen, accept, and listen. It's okay to not have a Christopher Columbus statue. It doesn't mean that you hate on Italians. I love it. It's Italians, but doesn't need to be Chris. You don't want a murderer that didn't even land on what's now the USA at all to be representative of that. It's a whole lot of incorrectness there. I know this again because of doing those tours that I did in Philadelphia. Do you know how much misinformation that I started spewing when I first had that job, because I was told to say that? And when I started reading, I was like, oh, well, that's not right. Why are we saying this? Ridiculous.
It's funny because you bring that up. Is like, and most people like understand, like, the Statue of Liberty. The inception for that statue was not just welcoming immigrants.
No, it was not.
And that's what the story goes around that. And you ask anybody about the Statue of Liberty, it's the same thing. It's a false narrative, and it's one that's been adopted, and we take into, and we believe it to be that, but no, that's not what it was about. It was about the emancipation of the slaves.
Yes, which is hence why she's got the shackles.
Yes, which no one ever sees on the feet or anything like that.
Come on.
Yeah.
Like, aesthetically, it doesn't look like a black person, but it's just saving slaves, because people have been slaves, not just blacks. It's that realistic too. Jews were enslaved for quite a long time. And there's a lot of things, and that's not to discount any of that. The treatment of slaves and how they went about it there was big differences. I will say that. A slave is a slave, so there's that aspect. But the whole dehumanization of how that went with black slaves was next level. You know what I mean? But still, yeah, what is that? It's almost like, well, let's retract it now. I read somewhere like, well, we don't even want to say we gave it to you, because what are you doing to even show that you emancipated people? Because it took 2 years after the Civil War for people to even go and let slaves know they were free. Hence Juneteenth.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? All this stuff is like crazy. And it is you the oldest person that was alive when you were born, and the youngest person that will be alive when you pass, hopefully of a long life. All of that is immediate influence. So that could have been somebody 90, 100 years old. I was born in 1970. That's a slave.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's crazy.
Basically, or just born right after slavery. I mean, and these things take effect on you. Just because a law changes doesn't mean the mindset changes overnight. It takes time. Just because gay marriage is legal doesn't mean you got everybody running around excited about it. They still don't have rainbow flags on people's advertising material. Why is that? What are you scared of? You should do that because then people know they're safe. But when you don't do that, people don't know they're safe because half the time you don't care about them. Except when it's Pride Parade and you want to look like you care because you want to come to your bank.
Yeah. Convenience.
Insane.
So on the most basic, like it can be as simple or as complex as you want to answer this, but what is photography to you?
Literally the painting of light, photons.
But to you, like that word, when I say photography, what emotion,
Sharing
what
people's
is it to
stories,
you?
connecting with people, sharing people's stories, sharing what it is. Besides, I love light. I'm really good with lighting. So besides that aspect and the techie aspect of it, because that's changing over time. Digital has changed everything when it comes to that. The magic is kind of gone with that when it came to film. That was super hard with film. With digital, it's not as hard. But you know, it's where I love people. If it's with products, you know, it's about the techie stuff. But if it's with people, to me, it's sharing something. There's a portrait of a guy in the blue jacket like this, where I described the light. He's got the top hat on, the light's here. If you look closely, if you know about diving, he's got an underwater, like a dive watch on. Not dive computer, but that. So that says something. You know, it's like subtleties like that.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, somebody might have like a little, like a PETA thing, or just one little thing that tells about somebody. I like that. You know? Yeah.
So this brings us to the very end of where we go into our speed round. I'm going to ask you a couple questions. It's just the first thing that pops up to your head. You can answer. They're quick little answers. Favorite holiday?
Birthday?
Your birthday's your favorite holiday? Okay.
Used to be Labor Day because I was going to Burning Man every year, but I stopped going, so I don't know if I have one anymore.
Texting or talking?
I don't text.
Good. I think we've lost the ability to just get on a phone or talk to people, I think.
I email, but I don't text. I email to schedule a call so that I can talk to people. Yeah.
Scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at keeping secrets?
10.
10. Wow. Very good. Very good. Favorite junk food?
I don't know if it's a junk food, but there's these rice crackers at Trader Joe's that I'm probably going to get later.
Trader Joe's has a lot of people's favorite foods. One of my other
I'm new to them.
It was their dark
Used to be
chocolate peanut
Popeye's
butter
chicken.
cups.
Oh yeah, there you go. Yo, you have those too.
Favorite childhood TV show?
Either Sesame Street, The Jeffersons, or Sonny and Cher. One of those three. I watched all three. Like, yeah.
What does a person need to be happy?
Themselves and just care and love around. That's it. Obviously, if you're not starving.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Wars. Both, but Star Wars.
What does SCUBA stand for?
Self-contained underwater breathing apparatus.
You definitely should not have missed that one.
Thank you, what's his name? Cousteau. Thank you for that.
Jacques Cousteau. I used to remember watching those. I loved watching that show. His documentary.
But thanks to them for the self-contained underwater breathing apparatus as well.
Have you ever slapped someone in the face?
No, I punched them, but not slapped.
If you could have any superpower as a superhero, what would it be? Fly. Awesome. Well, I'm going to leave us off there. I want to thank you so much for spending so much time with us and being so open and honest in this open talk. Your energy is obviously exuding, and your talent, you're doing exactly what you should be doing. And I can't wait to see more stories and more work from you. And I want to thank you. You want to leave off with any, I usually like to see, after all these kind of difficult times in what's going on in the world right now, what was something in the last month or so that gave you extreme hope for the future?
People are listening. I think so.
I love that. I love that. Well, thank you very much. We're going to leave a bunch of links and stuff where we can find your work. And please look at our work because it is important and beautiful. Thank you so much.
This was fun. Thanks. That was cool.